She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, kids, you're going to love this guest just because of the title of the book, See You Later, Ovulator. I mean, it makes everybody sing the tune in their head. And Esther Bloom, I love what you're doing. I love what you're championing, that you are helping the Lisa Fishers of the world, or maybe the Esther Blooms now. Tell me how you got involved in women's health like this.
Well, you know, women by nature are really the ones who fill a lot of medical practices. And
yes.
I've been serving menopausal women since, I would say, the early 2000s. But, you know, as you go through it yourself and really see more and more and more cases and do comprehensive testing, then you're like, you literally get on fuego, on fire, and light up. And I got to the point, what really was the tipping point for me with this book was just case after case, human after human who I spoke to, who was just so egregiously gaslit at the doctor. And Merriam-Webster dictionary, by the way, gaslighting is the most popular word in Merriam-Webster.com.
Is that right?
Of 2022, yes. And the back of my book has a banner that says Gaslight Free Zone. Because women were so, just the tales that I heard and my own experiences. I mean, case in point, I went to the doctor yesterday. I seriously thought I had a cyst that ruptured on one of my ovaries. I was in excruciating pain, like a week straight of cramps every night, not during the day, just at night. And I go to the doctor and she asks me if I have a new sexual partner and if she should test me for chlamydia. And I was like, no, I need an ultrasound.
Yes.
And I also think I have like some cystic breast going on. I need ultrasounds. And like, they were like, great, come back in 3 weeks.
Did you hand her your book and tell her to shove it up her butt?
Yeah, shove it up her hoo-ha.
Her ovaries.
She was just so, it wasn't my regular doctor. My regular doctor, I think, would have, but there was no, hey, this is part of perimenopause. Right. Hey, this is this. And the nurse practitioner said, she's like, oh yeah, I'm going through the same thing. But there was no solution. And I just observed, right? I'm a good studier of people. And I just observed and processed it and came home and was like, we're all still here in this. And menopause care is not being taught in medical schools either. So I was like, I'm going to use my platform to get the messaging out there and help people understand the tests that I do in practice so they can either come to me or find a doctor in their area who can run the proper tests, give them the tools they need to manage menopause and understand the diet and lifestyle and stress management pieces as well. And like, every woman deserves exquisite care, and we should not have to learn more about menopause through YouTube and Instagram, but that is where we are right now.
It's the one thing that I know if I post about. I just did a reel on my Instagram yesterday about a day in the life of my hormones, and that is I was getting my pellet. I only have the pellet for estradiol because the testosterone is too much for me. It's just the way we metabolize things, and we're all different. And that I was showing that I use testosterone transdermal and progesterone capsule. And one reply just said, no one discusses this. No one talks about our options except for the one big pharma option. And if you don't, there is a practitioner in Little Rock, Arkansas, who if you even ask about bioidentical, she'll tell you, this, I'm not your, that's the door. Not even that these are the options. Sure, it's okay if you don't do it, then I understand. Just like a dentist might not use the same type of cavity treatment that you want. The dentist would say, you know what, I don't provide that, but I can maybe help you with that. No, this doctor tells people that's the door and don't bring it up again, which it's not the way that anyone should be treated. We should be penalized for just asking. So tell me about the testing you do. What's your go-to?
Yes. So I do 3 types of tests in practice. The first is blood test recommendations. And the blood tests do need to be requisitioned by your doctor.
Right.
But I do run a really comprehensive panel of blood tests. And for those of you who are driving, listening to this, rest assured these panels are in my book as well. But I really look at insulin markers and how your body is handling, your fasting blood glucose, fasting insulin, and your A1C, because that's going to give me a really clear picture of how or why you're storing body fat, especially if it's around your midsection. It can give me a window into your cortisol as well, which is a stress hormone, which, cortisol is like Goldilocks, right? Too much and you can store a lot of fat around your midsection. Too little and you're exhausted and can have insomnia. Can have insomnia on either end of the spectrum. So you really want it to be just right. So I also do a comprehensive thyroid panel, and a lot of doctors will just run TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. That's about a sixth of the picture with thyroid hormones. And so I do comprehensive thyroid. I look at autoimmune markers. I look at your vitamin D, magnesium, and zinc. And I look at cardiac risk factors. I worked in cardiology units the first 5 years of my career before I was in functional medicine. And if I was a doctor, I would have gone into cardiology. I think it's fascinating.
Really?
And yeah, I love cardiology. And there's so much that you can do to fight inflammation in the vascular arena. And post-COVID, I just got back from a conference and heard Dr. Mark Houston speak. He's an integrative cardiologist who runs the Hypertension Institute at Vanderbilt. And he was talking about the fact that COVID is really pro-inflammatory. You can have, microclots forming, and the COVID molecules adhere to the cardiovascular walls. So we really want to look at cardiac risk factors, especially given COVID and in general, because if you can, so much of what we have and what I see in perimenopause and menopause is reversible. It is fixable.
That's very
You have to understand what you're fixing.
Yeah, that's very encouraging to hear that. Okay, so in blood testing, because I do love me a fasting insulin. Once Dr. Bickman explained that and why we get sick, it's the one go-to, because I'm a health coach, that I have everybody, and including myself. It's the first thing after I read the book, I came back to Arkansas, saw my nurse practitioner who does functional medicine, and I've been fasting I started my 6th year. My 6th birthday was the other day. So long time intermittent faster. So my fasting insulin is low. It's like 2.2 or so, but it is such a barometer of so many people's health, as you know. So when do you start getting nervous? Dr. Hyman used to say we like it at 5 or 6, but then I heard someone, either Bickman or someone the other day, said we really don't even like it between 6 and 12. That's starting to, it's a warning sign that things aren't great. So what do you think on that number?
Yeah, I concur. I don't like it too high at all. And A1C too, I really want like well below 5.2. And fasting glucose, I really love. 70s are wonderful. Yeah. I'll take the 80s right now. Most people I see are, 90 and up. And the good news is, it's so treatable. If you take a walk for 10 minutes after a meal, you will lower your sugar by 17%.
Isn't that crazy?
You just have to get up off your ass.
I know.
And walk.
Right.
And walk the dog for 10 minutes, take a break during, take movement breaks during your day. Just do 10 squats, it's so easy to fix.
I think that's...
So much is lifestyle.
Right, it is. And I think that's so manageable for people when you hear people say, we've got to get 10,000 steps. Well, so many people go, just pass me the Cheetos. I don't know. I'm not going to get 10,000 steps in. But if you start telling people, get up in the morning, get 10 minutes of sunlight as the sun rises, and walk while you're out there. Walk the dog, right? So many people have an animal, or go get the paper, or go see your neighbors or something. And then at lunch, take a break. Walk, that's another 10 minutes, and then another 10, and then it's cumulative. It adds up. Will you get 10,000 steps? I don't know, because I'm not on that paradigm to count that kind of stuff. I just know if you can stay active, you can do so much to mitigate insulin. This is what's so crazy about insulin, is, it's both our enemy and our advocate. Like, we have to have it to live. Every cell has to use it, but even that much too much, and I'm using the smallest fingers, is too much. It could be, deadly. It could change the course of your life. That's not an overstatement. So insulin, it is double-edged sword.
Yes. And again, if you can't get 10,000 steps, you can hop on a spin bike, you can jump rope, you can lift weights, which by the way, weightlifting also, talk about a metabolic driver of insulin. The more muscle you have, the more insulin sensitive you are, and the more carbs you can tolerate, which, how much fun is that?
Right.
And again, you can do 20 minutes 2 to 3 times a week is really all it takes. You don't have to be lifting long periods of time. And, you don't have to have like the best workout every time. You just have to be consistent in doing it. And, I always tease my mom because she's taken on exercise later in life. And I say, well, half-assed is better than no-assed, Mom.
Right. Because you don't want a big ass.
You don't want a big ass.
Right.
Yeah.
So half-assed is fine.
We have the Jewish ladies' disease, no ass at all.
Yes.
So it's like flat, But yeah, every bit counts. And there's research studies to show people in their 90s can build muscle.
That's amazing.
So it is never too late. Never.
Okay. So you come from the dietitian academia, right? So a lot has changed in your world, because when I got diagnosed with thyroid disease in 2003 and I gained that 15 pounds, the one that hung around until I started fasting and started eating more of a carnivore diet. I remember because an endocrinologist treated me, and he had a dietitian because he sees so many type 2 diabetics. And I remember her saying, now this is what you're going to eat 5 times a day, or 6 times. It was like 5 or 6 times a day. And never let yourself get hungry. Always. Before I went to bed, I would eat an apple because Angela told me to. Then in the morning, I would eat, oatmeal, which is all that's crap now. That grosses me out that I even ate it. And then I did this, and I would go back. Then I think in the very beginning, I was going back every 3 months for my lab work, and it took a minute for my lab work to improve until I got on Armour thyroid, or NP for thyroid, the complete thyroid medicine. But my weight did not budge for 20 years or 15 years until I started fasting. So when did you start? Because you come from, I'm sure, the school of that you were supposed to eat 5 times a day. Now you're telling people we're not married to that. So what are you telling people now as part of how many times a day they should eat?
It really depends on the individual, but I work a lot more fasting into it for sure. At minimum, a 12-hour fast from, after dinner to the next meal at the next day at breakfast. Some of and it depends where you are in your cycle. I have found and there's very little studies. When I wrote Cave Women Don't Get Fat, which is my prior book to
what
this
book is
one.
that? What's that called?
It's called Cave Women Don't Get Fat. It's a paleo diet book.
Another
for
great
women.
title. Yes.
Thank you. And so I looked at 73 studies. 13 were done on women and the subject of intermittent fasting. So I can tell you, I've been in practice over 27 years, and here's what I observe, because I have my own little study going on here. Is that the first half of your cycle, you're going to be much more insulin sensitive and tolerating fasting better than the second half of your cycle. Menopausal women tend to tolerate fasting better than perimenopausal women, depending where they are in their cycle. And in terms of thyroid function, some people with poorly performing or underperforming thyroids don't do well with fasting. Others do really well with fasting. So we do a lot of experimenting. Some women do well, again, with 12-hour fasts, 15-hour fasts, 18-hour fasts. Other women in my practice do well with the 5-2 method, where you eat business as usual 5 days a week. 2 days a week, you have one meal that's 500 calories, which is usually like a chicken breast, 2 cups of veggies, and a half a cup of starch, complex starch. So it really depends on the individual. It depends on, I look at their cortisol too. Sometimes we really need to put some adrenal support in place, which also supports the thyroid before we take on fasting. And some people don't need to fast at all to lose fat. They just adjust their ratios of protein to carbs and really optimize their protein intake, which ends up being for most women around 4 to 6 ounces a meal. If you're eating 2 meals a day, that's like 5 to 7 ounces of protein at those 2 meals. And then making sure that your protein ratios are much higher than your carbs. So if you're getting, 120 grams of protein to 150 grams, your carbs are 100 to 120. And then if you do have carbs, I do prescribe them with dinner because you're much more insulin sensitive later in the day than earlier. But I'm talking a cup of sweet potato or butternut squash, and with a protein and fibrous veggies, not on its own.
Well,
so those are kind of the rules that really help with fat loss for my clients.
That's one thing that the glucose goddess, I think, to really put a spotlight on is her food stacking. Is that what she calls it? When she says to open your eating window, whatever that is, with protein and fat, and then carbs and simple carbs. And she goes, and if you want fruit, she says, have it at the end. Not grab an apple at 2 p.m. in between your meals.
That's right.
Which is really a paradigm shift for all of us, because we were also told, eat this, but if you want a snack, here's a bowl of fruit, which now we know is too much. Now we understand that it's signals too much insulin and our glucose levels come up. But I'd never thought of that until she kind of lined it out. I went, oh, that makes sense. So, and it's also, I'm a grandmother. When my grandchildren come over, now if they come over and they want something to eat, I'm like, how does peanut butter sound? Or a piece of turkey or some cheese. And then you can, because they're like, I thought we were supposed to be eating pears around here. I go, no, at the end. So I think it's just changed the way we approach the valuable things on our plate.
Absolutely. And, the best way to really biohack this is to slap on a continuous glucose monitor for 2 weeks, and you'll know really quickly. Try eating fruit on an empty stomach. Try eating turkey on an empty stomach, or roast beef or cheese, and really compare the values, or try having fruit at the end of your meal and seeing what happens there. You'll know real quick what works for you and what doesn't. But then there's the non-metric or less metric qualifications like energy, hunger, cravings. You may find, once your appetite's really well controlled, that's how you also know your blood sugar is usually in check.
So the signs that you are insulin resistant include constant hunger,
poor sleep.
Yeah. Well, is it also feeling sleepy after a meal? I have a client that says she gets sleepy after a meal. Is that a sign that she might be insulin resistant?
It can be, yes, absolutely, because you instantly commit carbocide. You go into a bit of a carb coma.
Oh man, that would be a great death, though. I mean, a piece of chocolate cake, I could do it.
Oh, please. I'm talking like pasta carbonara at Rayo's in Vegas. That would be my death row meal.
Exactly.
But yes. So, and also hot flashes, and, disrupted sleep, insomnia. It's when you clear up blood sugar issues, the hot flashes really, really subside. That's why sugar is so pro-inflammatory and really triggers hot flashes. So all of those can be signs of insulin resistance for sure.
That's something that since I started fasting, probably when I was beginning menopause, or I was postmenopausal then, but I've never had a hot flash. And Jen Stevens says part of her research is that it reduces our hot flashes. So that's another nod to, okay, fast. That's why fasting works for me. But now when we talk about a cycle, because the crazy thing about menopause is once you're there, you forget what your body was like when it was a menstruating fool. It's like I have no recollection of periods and cramps. So when I have these younger girls, come to me and say, what about fasting during my cycle? I know Mindy Pels is kind of cautious about it. Is it because, is it the connection? So progesterone, does it dip in the second half?
Yes.
So is it tied to them progesterone? Because it's around that time that people will say, I have harder, or I'm sorry, they've told me the week before their cycle, they have harder time fasting. So what's it tied
to? Yeah, it is. It's also a real decline in estrogen too.
Okay.
And it's the whole 1-2 punch of declining estrogen, progesterone, and your blood sugar is tied to that. So you do get more hypoglycemic, more shaky. That's why I have women really try and double up on protein. There's always that like 2 to 3 day period where you're just ravenously hungry, and you are actually, your metabolic rate does speed up by a couple hundred calories those days. So use that opportunity. I'm like, this is the time to go, have a can of tuna fish on hand or some leftover steak or chicken, and around 3 p.m. you pound that down so that you're not crashing the rest of the day and you get a better sleep at night. And that really makes a huge difference, and it will cut your cravings too. I mean, protein is going to raise and sustain your serotonin and dopamine. So most people who have cravings just simply aren't eating enough protein. It's often the vegetarians who, or low people who just are afraid to eat a lot of protein. They're having 1 egg in the morning, or like a yogurt, right. And then, lunch is salad plus or minus a protein, and dinner's balanced. Once you bump up your protein to like 40 to 50 grams at breakfast, the rest of the day is going to be easy street. It really will be.
I would say that even for me to adopt more of a meat-based diet, and I'm doing it to heal my one remaining autoimmune condition I have, and it's vitiligo. And it's repigmenting slowly, but I'll be on the planet another 40 years. I mean, you can't get rid of me. So I'm not in a hurry, but I've reversed all my other autoimmune conditions with fasting and my lifestyle. But I've noticed since I adopted that all of my sugar cravings have just about dissipated until I eat sugar again. If I eat sugar again, then it spawns it. So after Thanksgiving, then I wanted a little bite of sweet for several days, or if I have, a treat, it spawns it. But if instead I eat eggs and bacon and beef, and I get some local raw yogurt from my dealer, then
dealer.
Girl, I've got so many dealers right now.
Does he like open up his coats and there's just like packets of yogurt hanging out the sides?
There might be a van in a Kroger parking lot with a pager number. Yes. But because in Arkansas, it's against law to sell raw milk. So, I can.
So silly.
Yeah. So silly. I mean, it's just.
So silly.
I can't even get into, it just makes me so angry. But I notice though, that if I stock up on that, then I'm not looking around going, I need a little, that feeling of, I need a little bite of something sweet.
Yes. Oh, please. Yes. Same thing. Yeah. I had some sugar over Thanksgiving, and I definitely felt myself wanting it. Or the same thing, like if I have a cocktail the next night, I'm like, ooh, time for cocktails. And I'm like, no. Like, just cut it off and get back on the horse. And then the craving passes. Yeah. And that's the thing too with sweet cravings. If you can just offset it, or have a spoon of nut butter instead, or just wait for like 20 minutes or go brush your teeth, it does pass. It does pass. And cinnamon tea, licorice tea, those all really help with cravings. Or my favorite, what I'm drinking now, is just good old hot water with lemon. And that sour really just wipes out the desire for sweet for me. But if that doesn't work, my other go-to is a tablespoon of glutamine powder in water up to 3 times, or heavy cream up to 3 times a day. Okay. And that will like knock out your cravings really quickly.
Tell me what the glutamine does then.
Well, it stabilizes your blood sugar really quickly. And it's just, this is a trick I learned from the late Charles Poliquin. He was always talking about putting glutamine in heavy cream. It's fat and a little protein, but it also heals inflammation in the gut.
Oh, that's powerful.
Works really well.
Mm-hmm. One thing you were mentioning about the alcohol, I have started drinking the Mocktails that you can get in cans. I have a dealer for that too, because you can't find it anywhere. And because it's got adaptogens, it's got other things. You serve that over ice and maybe salt the rim and a lime. It's delicious.
It's delicious.
It's a wonderful thing, and I've totally eliminated my desire for hooch. And I don't know where it happened. It's not a pious thing. It's not a righteous thing. I truly don't even think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And those adaptogenic herbs too, really make a huge difference because they take the edge off your stress. So you don't feel like you need to numb yourself with alcohol, but you can just naturally chill out. So I do. I like to. There's a couple I use. Shout out to Wild Women. It's WILE, and they make unanger and unworry tinctures.
Oh, that's great.
Which is so nice. And I put those in my, either do shots before bed if I'm feeling anxious, or just at night when I want to take the edge off, have a stressful day.
Yeah.
And the other company I love, they're called Rock Grace. And same thing, they infuse rose water with crystals and ashwagandha. Yeah. They really, their crystals are stunning, and they let them charge in the sun, put them in the rose water.
Wow.
And they are sold in bottles. It looks like wine. It looks like rosé, but it tastes so wonderful. And I did a book signing in New York and served it. I didn't serve any alcohol. I just served the rose water. And everyone was like, this is freaking awesome.
Spell that name for me.
Rock as in
R-O-C-K. Okay.
R-O-C-K and Grace as in amazing.
I'm putting all this in show notes too.
I don't get compensated. I just really like these products because, if they can make your life better and easier and make you feel like you're still participating socially and not just standing there with nothing. No, always have a substitute. And you'll be amazed when you're the person who says they're not drinking. A lot of people that are like, oh, thank God I don't feel that pressure to drink either. And it's not, I can't drink. It's that I don't drink. Because guess what else? Like alcohol really triggers hot flashes. And it raises your circulating estrogen for 4 to 6 hours after one cocktail. So that means you're spending like 25% of your day in an estrogen dominant state with every cocktail.
Yeah, and you don't want that. Yeah.
I'm a lady in perimenopause. Let me tell you, the estrogen roller coaster is so real and so challenging. So like alcohol, good luck sleeping that night. And it's awful.
Yeah, and I have read that the older we get, the less we're really able to tolerate it. And it's not fun. I mean, we're a cheap date, that's for sure, because it's one.
I know.
But the other thing is sparkling water is always good with like a ranch water, but without the tequila. And again, you still have the bubbles, you still have the salt. I love the salt on the rim. That's one thing I really crave just as a intermittent faster, because I may not get enough electrolytes. It's salt.
So glad you brought this up. So let's talk about like another amazing DIY mocktail that you can do at home that's going to support your adrenals and your blood sugar. In 12 ounces of water, you add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. You can, if you want, add an additional electrolyte packet. You don't have to. And the juice of half a lime. And you shake it really well over ice on the rocks. And you drink that throughout the day. A, it will really help heal your adrenals if you have a flat cortisol curve. B, it will give you really nice energy. And C, it will keep you hydrated because the sodium will make the water stay in your cells longer. It absolutely hydrates you.
It actually made my mouth water, you just saying all that. There's something...
It's like a margarita, but no tequila.
Totally, and you don't have a headache the next day. And it's the sleep interruptions that happen that my husband and I have said, well, if we're going to drink, we're going to have to do it Saturday at noon so that it doesn't bother us later. Because something happens and it's awful, because once you're perimenopausal and you're awake, you are awake. You will not go to bed.
You are awake. That's right. And it's like, I know, I really don't drink much unless I know I can nap the next day, because it just takes me down. It's like, I don't even have time. And I really don't crave it either. To me, the coolest thing about really cutting back on alcohol was just really, forcing myself to find coping mechanisms like meditation, hot baths, reading, just really giving myself permission to have a lot of downtime to recharge in the evenings. I leave my phone upstairs if I go downstairs, just like cutting off, putting my phone on do not disturb. But also I noticed like such a burst in creativity and flow, and I'll journal at night, like things just come out and you're not interrupting your thoughts, being hungover and exhausted all the time, you're much clearer. A lot less irritability too, because alcohol can make you very irritable the next day. That's when I really started cutting back, because I was like, I'm not nice to my family the day after I drink, and that's not fair to anybody.
The lack of sleep is really something that is such a bumpy road during that time, and until, for me, until I can have, personally against my bioidentical hormone pellet, then it gets my sleep back on the cycle. That's how I know I'm low in my estradiol pellet. I wake up in the middle of the night to pee a lot. It's nighttime polyuria, which is common. And my other one is waking up and not falling. That feeling of not falling back to sleep angers you almost, because your husband's asleep, the kids are asleep, the dog's asleep. You're the only one. You feel like the only one. And then you feel wrecked the next day. So the options women have now, because we do know that they have them. Big Pharma actually, has an option for you. I've chosen a different path. And then there are some people that are just using probably herbs and tinctures and other things. Let's go down that path. What are some things women can do who think, I don't have the money? Because bioidentical hormone replacement therapy can be costly, because, if you're doing it quarterly or every 6 months. So let's talk about other options that maybe are more affordable.
Well, and so guess what? Like, you can get bioidentical progesterone that's Prometrium. It's a capsule at the drugstore. Prescription's about $3 or $4.
Oh.
And an estrogen patch is, at least partially bioidentical, that you get from a regular pharmacy as well.
Okay.
So testosterone cream is not approved for FDA use in women, so that you cannot get covered under insurance.
Yeah, I know.
That's a transdermal cream. Right. And DHEA is a supplement that that's not terrifically expensive, and you can take that orally, and that's over the counter. But let's say that you do not want hormones, you are concerned about cancer risk, you've been through cancer, and your doctor is saying absolutely not. Then let's work from the bottom up. So vaginally, you can do vaginal rejuvenation laser therapy. Yeah. There are FDA-approved devices. You do want to work in a practice that's very experienced, because if you go online, you'll read scary stories that cause scarring and burning, but you can absolutely work with a doctor who does this regularly, very gentle, low-dose therapy. What it does is it rebuilds the collagen in the vaginal walls, so you can actually produce lubrication naturally. You eliminate dry, painful sex, but also you eliminate the risk of bladder atrophy.
Oh.
And
yes.
that, and the nocturia.
Yes.
You also do want to work with a pelvic floor therapist. I call mine my vagician. You want to make sure that if your pelvic floor muscles are weak, it's harder to pee and poop. Yeah. It can be harder to have an orgasm. And if your pelvic floor muscles are too tight, then it's harder to empty your bladder. Your bladder can't expand all the way if the walls are constantly closing in. So you want to work with a pelvic floor therapist who does go in, and obviously it's done by other women, but goes intravaginally and can work gently at either releasing trigger points, and you can use a wand at home too, or she'll also teach you muscle exercises, physical therapy, on how to either relax pelvic floor muscles or tighten them depending on what you need. And it's hip bridges and squats and lunges and clamshells, and things that really work your glutes, make a huge difference. So that's number one. Number two is maca is a wonderful supplement that has been shown in about 80% of women to reduce hot flashes and really nourishes the adrenals. It's a great overall tonic. But to reduce hot flashes, I also love something called Rapontic rhubarb. And again, this is all in my book too. Rapontic rhubarb, primrose oil. And again, if you just ditch alcohol and caffeine and eat a high protein diet, you're going to have a huge improvement in your hot flashes right then and there. B complex, very important for helping your liver detoxify your hormones. Also nourishes the adrenals. Fiber from cruciferous vegetables and flax seeds and chia seeds. So broccoli, cauliflower, radishes, Brussels sprouts, artichokes, kale, all of those, again, help your liver process hormones. And fiber binds excess estrogens. This is for men too, pulls it out, and also helps pull out estrogens from the gut. We do metabolize estrogens in the gut as well, not just the liver. So all of those are really beneficial. I do, if someone's detox pathways are really poor, often I'll put them on a good cruciferous concentrate and some glutathione, which is the liver's most important antioxidant. So all of those are great. And then some magnesium glycinate at night to really take the edge off anxiety and promote sleep and regular bowel
Magnesium
movements.
is a wonder drug. And it's not even a drug. It's the thing that's really changed my health. I do the magnesium, the Bioptimizers, magnesium breakthrough, because it has 7 different kinds. It doesn't have a great one. It doesn't have magnesium threonate, which is another one that I know is valuable because of the blood-brain barrier, but it helps so much. So for I'm a thyroid patient, so we're always constipated. Just know that if you have a thyroid member of the family, she's constipated, and the magnesium helps with that. But then Dave Asprey says, you get too much if you get party pants, because all of a sudden you have this urgency. Urgency like none other. And then you back off your magnesium, so that's fine.
We call that sharding.
Yes, it is. It is.
You never trust a fart.
Never. Right. I had to tell my kids that at a young age.
That's right.
One of the things, parenting. One of my parenting tips. Never trust a fart. So magnesium's good with the relaxation. But tell me, what's a good... See, this is why I never understand. Do you want to take cortisol in a capsule or do you not? Because my brain can't wrap around the fact if someone is adrenal insufficient, are they taking cortisol to help them or to help regulate it so you have it more in the morning and not in the evening?
Yeah, well, you're rarely taking, in cases of severe adrenal disease, you could take Cortef to rebuild your cortisone, but that's really rare. Often, if someone's severely deficient, you could take a glandular for a few months and add in nutrients like licorice, which helps sustain the half-life of cortisol. And no, people, I'm not talking Twizzlers, I'm talking herbal licorice. And again, a B complex and adaptogenic herbs, ashwagandha, rhodiola, holy basil, that also helps really support the adrenals. And of course, diet is really key. A lot of organ meats, good quality fats, coconut oil, avocado, grass-fed butter, all of that, fish oils, all of that cannot be underestimated either. But also, I want to say, you want to look at if someone's really adrenally depleted and they're kind of doing all the nutrient things and lifestyle and still not getting better, you do want to get ruled out for chronic stealth infections, either in the gut or Lyme, mold, chronic Epstein-Barr, COVID, all of those have a huge impact on the adrenals. And you're talking to a girl who used to have like a flat line of cortisol and now has a normal cortisol curve because I had chronic Lyme, I had mold, I had Epstein-Barr, I had H. pylori, and could not lift weights without crashing, could only walk. This was for years. This was until like a year ago, basically, for a long time. And so, it really, getting those infections and toxins out of my system.
How did you
treat my life back?
H. pylori is very common. So how did you treat that?
It's a pain in the ass. I'm still working on it. I have really good protocols in my practice that I use that really break up biofilms and, restore levels of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Hydrochloric acid is a great firewall. And so it really repairs a lot of dysbiosis and leaky gut and just keeps the bug population under control.
Is that only
probiotics?
Is the only way you know you have H. pylori is it done through a biopsy of your esophagus or your gut? Actually, it'd be in your gut through like an upper GI, or there's not a breath test for H. pylori like there is SIBO, right?
I don't think so, but what I use is the GI map because a lot of people get biopsy. They'll do an endoscopy and get a biopsy, and the H. pylori doesn't show up, but it shows up in my stool samples because it's located either to the small intestine or in some cases the large intestine. So a lot of patients, have challenged me and said, well, my doctor says I don't have it. I'm like, but it's here. It's rampant in your stool test. Just because it isn't in one part of your pipes doesn't mean it's not in the other.
Got it.
You just have it located in different areas. So it can be stubborn, but I really do have a pretty high success rate treating it. And sometimes I do have to treat 2 to 3 times, myself included.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you know
really stubborn.
How did you know when you eradicated it then?
Because I retest.
Okay.
I do H. pylori stool tests until I see that they're gone.
Okay.
So you can get rid of it, and then, lactobacillus is a really good preventer, as is hydrochloric acid, and really just restoring your digestive fire is what it's about. But any of those things, so back to the adrenal things, look for the root of the root, right? If you're trying your diet and you're doing your supplements and you've really optimized your thyroid and you're still feeling exhausted, there's usually 9 times out of 10, there's something else cooking in you.
And I would say SIBO is something I'm seeing very often with people, of just the ones who say, I was fine until I had the greens at Thanksgiving, or something that was very fibrous. And then they were like, I was in the bathroom all night, or I had this pain.
Yeah.
And then I start thinking, so that's the small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So what's the root cause of that one? Antibiotic use? Sugar?
Well, often you look at SIBO in and of itself is not a primary diagnosis. That's why I don't do SIBO tests in my practice. It's secondary. Okay. So you want to look at the conditions that enabled SIBO to grow in the first place, which is often H. pylori. So H. pylori sets up camp, and it shuts off the production of stomach acid so that it can live with you as its host quite comfortably. Once you turn the fire hose on, once you kill it off and then bring back hydrochloric acid, it's really hard to grow H. pylori and SIBO again. So again, with SIBO, it's treating the H. pylori and dysbiosis and really crowding out with healthy, good amounts of probiotics, getting lots of red and blue concentrates. So those feed a bacteria in your gut called Akkermansia. And Akkermansia, for those of you who are struggling to lose weight, it's very hard with low Akkermansia to lose weight. It's linked to obesity and inflammation. Okay. So Akkermansia feeds on red and blue concentrates. So pomegranate seeds, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, red apples, but blueberries. If you're not eating those, you can certainly take them in supplement form. There's a product called Phytobiome, which is excellent. But and you can take straight Akkermansia. There's a company, Pendulum Probiotics, and they make it. But you really have to take a lot more than's listed on the bottle. And I don't have enough research to know if the Pendulum products work. So diet is really key in replenishing your Akkermansia, and really making sure, fiber, variety in your diet is also key, like really rotating your fruits and vegetables seasonally. Don't just eat the same stuff every single day. That also makes a very big difference in gut health.
Do you eat the fruits out of season? Because, here we are in winter. We have the winter squash and a few vegetables. I can't think of any fruit. I mean, I still eat blueberries year round because they're so good for your brain. I try to get organic, obviously. Yeah. But we're both in areas, whether it's Arkansas or Connecticut, that there's no fruit in the winter. So what do you do about that?
Yeah, well, I tend to do more citrus in the winter. I do pomegranate seeds, which are in season now, which make me so happy. I love them. They're just so tart and wonderful. I do have clementines also.
Yes.
My mother-in-law ships up fruit from Florida.
Yes.
She'll ship up grapefruit and halo, or what are they called?
It is a halo.
They're these oranges that are honey bells.
Oh,
She ships up honey bells.
Oh. She could be my
high
dealer.
On the glycemic index. She could totally be your dealer.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Yes.
Because that is hard
Pineapple.
to Yeah, okay.
Yes, pineapple is another good one. So you and yes, of course I still do berries, but less so in the winter. They tend to be very sour anyway. So I really tend to focus more on winter fruits.
You know what's crazy is
from
that
Florida.
I remember there was the Broadway play. I think it was a Neil Simon, and they wouldn't say the word cancer. They called it the C word. I can't remember. I think it was Neil Simon. But then I really think that there needs to be a Broadway play where we talk about the M word. And I know there have been some things on Broadway.
There is. Menopause the musical.
That's right. Menopause the musical. That was it. My brain was going, I think there is one. But but my point in this is we have to have the arts point to the fact that we don't talk about it for us to talk about it. Like why aren't people why was I embarrassed for years that I was going to go into menopause? Like I didn't talk about it. I don't know why. I guess I thought it wouldn't afflict me.
Yeah.
So
culturally it wasn't normalized. It's not even taught in medical schools.
And why is that? Because don't they know their women patients will have this happen in her maybe 40s, but for sure her 50s?
It is so egregious. And my grandfather, he was a physician, and he said to me when I was young, he goes, the word hysterectomy is derived from, hysteria, the Latin root. And I was like, that's so horrible. That is so, so horrible. Yes. And I didn't even really understand what menopause was, but women were just told they were crazy and put in mental hospitals. And today it's really not so different. Women are either told, good luck with that, it's menopause, or here's an antidepressant, which research does show it helps with hot flashes, but it's never going to replenish your hormones. Right. Or they're given a prescription for the pill or the IUD. And it's like, well, menopause isn't a birth control deficiency.
Why are they doing that? I don't understand that. I women who are 50 who sit before me and say, well, I'm on the pill. I go, you're on the pill at 50?
Yeah,
for
right.
hormones.
And worried about getting knocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some women can still get pregnant. Use birth control until you're fully menopausal.
I understand,
ladies.
but I'm saying
don't come to me saying you're pregnant.
Right.
But yeah, it's so egregious. I mean, medical studies are done on women and on men and rats. They're not done on women. Mm-hmm. Number one. Number two, there was that ridiculous study called the Women's Health Initiative that came out in the 90s that took women who were 10 years out of menopause and said, oh, I wonder what happens when we give them hormones derived from the urine of pregnant horses, because, gee, that's biocompatible with a woman's body, right?
I can't even believe this is still something that people are relying on. This is antiquated, one-sided.
Yes.
I know they call it science, but I just call it somebody was bought and paid for. Somebody made a lot of money on this.
Well, I don't know how they made money, because then they scared the crap out of women and said, oops, hormones cause heart disease, increase of risk of blood clot and stroke. And so 2 generations of women were totally deprived of good meno care. I remember my mom was on that Premarin, and I said, get the hell off that, Mom. Like, that is going to be really dangerous in the long run, because she has a huge risk of hypertension and stroke in her family. So I was like, get the hell off that. But women weren't offered a better alternative. And so finally, in 2018 and 2022, the North American Menopause Society, and you can see this position paper at menopause.org, but they reversed this position paper and said, not only is that data not true, that hormones do not cause cancer or increase the risk of stroke or heart attack, but that women can really benefit from early intervention, hormone therapy, and, offset their risk of bone loss, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's.
Yes, cognitively. It's so beneficial.
Right? So beneficial. And, it's really the trio of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. A lot of doctors will prescribe hormones, but they're missing the testosterone window. And the testosterone has a phenomenal effect on libido, cognitive function, mood, mental focus, heart health. So it's like, don't forget testosterone. That's also really, really important. And women are like, oh my God, I'm gonna grow hair on my face and lose it from my head. Nope. And it's like, well, if you're given too high of a dose, yes, but the dosage of bioidentical hormones or any hormone replacement should be about 1/5 of the dose of the birth control pill. These are low dose. We don't need a woman's body to start ovulating and getting pregnant.
Right.
You just need enough of a baseline to prevent vaginal atrophy, urethral atrophy, and like UTIs and incontinence. Yeah. And again, the aforementioned heart disease, Alzheimer's, bone loss.
So with you, with the pain you were having, was it a cyst or is it just something, a part of menopause that's causing you this discomfort?
Well, I'd love to know myself, but I can't even get an ultrasound for 3 more weeks.
That's ridiculous.
They should have done an ultrasound then and there. And they were like, no, come back in 3 weeks.
That's ridiculous.
So what I'm going to start playing with, and I'll report back on my social media, is some castor oil packs and just see if I can't knock it out that way.
Well, I haven't.
Because I'm so curious.
Yes, I'm in my, we call it my studio because it's a studio. It's my
Your
closet.
studio.
Yes. And so
I
have to hide my castor oil packs because let me tell you people, I am a hottie in the bedroom at night. I've often have maybe my retainer in. I've got a castor oil pack. I am. That man desires 35 years of marriage, and this is what he gets. But the truth is, those castor oil packs, y'all, are magical. And they're good for your liver, digestion, all these things. So,
pelvic floor inflammation.
Yes, all these things. And in fact, it reminds me, I forget to do it because it will leak. If you're not careful, it will leak on your clothes or on I have white sheets. And then it really looks like you sharted.
Yeah, exactly. Anal leakage. So
yes,
I'm going to look at, there's a company, again, no financial ties. There's a company called Queen of Thrones.
That's what mine is. Yes.
That makes beautiful castor oil packs. And they're washable. And, you can also just put a really small amount on directly your skin. You could also just put a little saran wrap over it. And then a heating pad to just enable it to penetrate better.
All right, that'd be good.
And that can work too.
So all these things we're talking about.
So I'm going to try the castor oil packs.
Yeah, for sure do that. I'm putting all this in show notes though. Your books, the Queen of Thrones, the menopause.org, Wild Women, Rock Race, all the things. You are just a plethora of information. I
sleep around.
Yeah, I see that. You were the inquisitive one in school that raised her hand all the time and said, but what about you?
It's gotten, the beauty of menopause, I'm sure you find this too, Lisa, is like you lose your filter and you're like, sure. I just call things out a lot faster now because I'm like, I don't have time to waste and don't BS me. I don't have time for this. And like, you and I have a lot of women out there to help, and there's 6,000 women going into menopause every day. My inbox and my DMs are full every day of women saying, can I please come work with you? I'm dying. I need help. I have like many month waiting list of people because there's just not enough support and resources for women out there, and it's not okay. We have to do better for each other.
Well,
we have to do better for each other.
I mean, truthfully, thankfully that we have people like you, and I thank you for devoting your life to this. So, because it's the commisery that we sometimes need of people saying, but we're going to right your ship. I mean, we're going to get this back. It might be a little Queen of Thrones. It might be a mocktail. It might be... I love your vagician. I mean, it might be
my vagician.
We
all need a vagician.
We have one in Little Rock, and I'm totally calling her because what I was starting to do was some Pilates because they said there are some machines in Pilates, the whatever that's called, the fancy machine, and they said that
the reformer.
Yes, the reformer. That said that may help with some pelvic floor things, but no, I'm going straight to the source. I'm going to go to there are a couple of vagicians in Little Rock that I know of. So
no, but don't give up the Pilates either because I do that weekly for pelvic floor therapy too, and it really, you know what it's done? It's like it also, like, if you find you're having a lot of lower back pain, if you release your pelvic floor, it releases the back pain. So it's all tied in to, so however you work your body, it's all beneficial.
Well, you mentioned one thing, the vagician I'm thinking of, these pelvic floor girls in Arkansas, I forget, it's Arkansas Pelvic Floor Therapy or something. They said, yes, we're the people that you can talk about, we talk about poop all the time. Yeah. And people don't realize, they're not thinking of the anatomy to go, oh, the so-and-so's connected to the so-and-so's connected to, and it all, when you were talking about just the vaginal floor therapy, how it's connected and how it can provide you with the security that you're not going to shart or the security that you're going to hold your pee in when you laugh.
You're not going to pee yourself.
Yes.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, considering, I don't know if you saw that New York Times article, it's like most people don't even know where the clitoris is, women included. Don't even know. So pelvic floor therapies also, people are like, what is that? So, and GYNs don't recommend it either. And so if you've had, this is what my vagician taught me, if you've had an episiotomy, right, you're much, like me, you're much more likely to suffer with incontinence if you don't handle that pelvic floor situation.
So do the C-section people then, they don't have the teething when you cough or sneeze or jump on a trampoline then, right?
It depends on the person, I think, because your pelvic floor can weaken in pregnancy too, because you have all that relaxin'.
Right. I see it,
going. So, and if you're someone who likes to like power pee because you just don't have a lot of time for it to flow out, like that can weaken your pelvic floor. If you're someone who's had painful sex, right? If sex is painful, it's not supposed to hurt. That's usually pelvic floor issues. So, and we've just normalized suffering for women. We've normalized leaking. We've normalized painful sex. We've normalized peeing 6 times a night.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, well, that's just the way it is. No, it is not the way it is. Like, that is madness.
No, I told my husband,
we're going to reverse this.
I told my husband once when I first started peeing in the middle of the night that I had an enlarged prostate, because that's the only time I'd ever heard about it was with men. I don't have a prostate.
Exactly. And men, by the way, can use pelvic floor therapy too. Men can leak and have incontinence and prostate issues, and men need pelvic floor therapy as well.
Well, Esther, you are a delight, a wealth of information and beautiful inside and out. Thank you for what you do for women. Posting all this, putting all the things in the show notes, looking up glutamine powder when we are off this call, and I love everything you're doing. So if people do want to get in touch with you, I guess they'll just reach out via DM or your website.
Yeah, so first of all, I have an offer for your listeners, which is in February, I'm doing a live event virtually. And so if you go to estherblum.com/menopause, you get access to my book. You get my Happy Hormone Cocktail Guide, and you get a VIP ticket to my event.
Okay, well, I'm doing that when
I
hang up.
So not going to want to miss that. Right. And then come to hang with me on Instagram at Gorgeous Esther.
Yes, and I do, and that's how I see all you've got great social media. So right. Good job, and thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.